Hello Sagittarius, my name is Uma. This is your horoscope for the full moon and Mars conjunction in Gemini. Now you must be gentle with me as I will be with you. I have a Gemini moon placement. Hello Sagittarius, welcome back. I hope the arborist outside isn't too distracting for us in this reading. They've just started to chop some trees down in the street to make a clearing. So I hope this is relaxing. Although you know what, I think in some way the auditory interference might paint an extra layer on some of the difficulty that we might be experiencing at this particular lunation. As I said, this is a Gemini full moon, so that's happening on Thursday the 8th of December at 8 minutes past 3 p.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So for all of us, let's look to the 7th of December to experience the divine, to look at the moon and to do our spell work and to protect ourselves, to relinquish what is no longer desired or required in our experience. Now, think of Gemini. Think of the conversation that occurs in Gemini. Think of the twins, that duality. Think of absorbing information. Think of the intellect and of sharing information, of language, of inquisition. All of these are beautiful qualities of a Gemini. And at a full moon in Gemini, we can come to perhaps expect some sort of emotionally charged conversation to occur at this time. We know that when there's a full moon, our bodies react. Our emotions are heightened, sometimes beautifully, sometimes in a more difficult fashion. We can cast our minds back to times past. We can think about the waves and tides of our emotional body over our lifetime. Particularly for you, Sagittarius, at a Gemini full moon, this will be activating your 7th house, which is where we come together and where we commit to relationship with folks that we care about. So a full moon in Gemini is enough for a Sagittarian to deal with. There can be great triumph and victory and passion around this time. There can also be a lamentation and a remembrance of loss at this time too. This moon is very specific because not only is it a Gemini full moon, which forevermore, Sagittarius, will be highlighting your 7th house of relationship. Whenever you hear Gemini full moon, you'll know that it's about this time of year where I look to the other. I look to my companions, the ones that remain. I celebrate. The ones that are no longer, I remember with a fond wish. This moon is in a conjunction with a much more aggressive, direct energy. So Mars, the planet, has been in Gemini since the 20th of August. It's stationed retrograde on the 31st of October and is making its way back to 16 degrees of Gemini, the middle decan, the middle of Gemini, and will meet this full moon in exact conjunction. So when you think about this full moon, it's also a full Mars. The sun is beaming down its light to its fullest potential onto Mars and all that Mars represents to us. We know that Mars is really direct and confident and forward-moving activation. We know that there's a lot of power to Mars. There's also the potential for a lot of cutting remarks, a lot of sharpness to Mars. There's in a low energy, there's violence and aggression that's attached to Mars. Retrograde motions, so think of it, there's two cars, they're driving in the same direction, one's going slightly faster than the other. It looks as though they're moving ahead and the other one's moving backwards. This is not so, but from our perspective, it looks as though Mars is moving backwards because the Earth has a quicker rotation. And so at this time, there's reins being put on Mars. There's a chokehold. Mars hates to be held back. Mars hates to be confined. And so frustration arises with this transit. Frustration with a full moon is frustrated emotions. With a full moon in Gemini, there is conversations that may begin to occur because of this emotional frustration. And so I'm being really gentle with you, Sagittarius, because as a mutable sign, you'll be feeling this quite sincerely. It might be even worth going into your chart, your birth chart, and having a look to see if you have any planets in Gemini or Pisces or Virgo, because all of the mutable signs are feeling this particular lunation with an extra specific intensity. The tarot card for 16 degrees of Gemini, the second decan of this sign, and indeed Mars itself in Gemini, is the Nine of Swords. So the cards that we all know so well and love, the ones drawn by Pamela Coleman Smith, are based on the teachings of a religious order called the Secret Order of the Golden Dawn, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. They were a magical society in the 1800s that Pamela was involved in, and she, from the lessons of the group, drew these cards. And so in that, there's astrological information in each of the cards. The Nine of Swords is Mars energy in Gemini. And so you can see that picture there. You can see the repetition of thought, the isolation that one can feel when bound by the rotisserie of their own mind. The Gemini in a lower vibration, fighting with one another, reminding one another, not willing to shut up and give the mind a moment of clearing. This can be agonizing to experience in our lived lives. This is always a moment when it shows up in a reading to be gentle with the person you're reading for, and to suggest that perhaps some help with a therapist might help them activate a healthy conversation with all of these thoughts, this repetition. So I'm seeing this here in our zodiac, and this is playing out for all of us. Every single sign of the zodiac is experiencing in some way a Nine of Swords moment, Sagittarius, so you're not alone. To relate this to our seventh house, to the house where we do find kinship and relationship, and when we commit to the souls of others, I could imagine might be bringing out some anxiety for you. I also wish to put forward that the rage that Mars can bring in Gemini, the anger, is not something to silence yourself about. This isn't something to keep inside. This is, in fact, valid. And when you look outside and you look at the life that you have experienced so far and the past, as sometimes we do in the Nine of Swords, and if we look to the future and we worry about what's to become of the human experience, we can be angry. And if you're a person from a marginalized community, or if you've experienced violence at the hand of someone that cared about you, if you've experienced rejection or neglect at the hands of folks that were supposed to care about you, I could imagine that this would be tied up, sewn into this rage. And this emotion is valid. In fact, in some ways, Mars reminds us that rage is valid. It's how we channel that rage and how we put it forward and how we work with it that makes the difference. So if this is an aggravated, angry conversation that you need to have with either a professional or with a close friend, a confidant that knows that you're not yelling at them, but that you just need to get it out, then I would probably encourage you that you engage in some form of connection at this full moon, Sagittarius. I think that probably it's my recommendation that we all lay low physically. Like, it's probably best not to engage in spaces that might be triggering for you, as going out to an event or in public space because everybody is feeling this Mars in Gemini. So this aggravated conversation. So in terms of maybe avoiding the energies of other people, it might be better just to stay indoors with folks in your seventh house, with folks that remain in your seventh house that you love and care about. But this anxiety, this worry, these repetitious thoughts are going to be worked through conversation. And so I'll say it again. If there's somebody in your experience in your life, a good friend that you can go to and tell them your rage, tell them how you're feeling at the moment, then they'll know that you're not aggravated at them and that you need to let it out. You need to let some of this feeling out. Also, professional therapy is a really great tool to speak to an unbiased source, someone who is trained and someone who is not looking to diagnose you and tell you what's wrong with you because you're having these feelings, because there's nothing wrong with you for having these feelings. This is an experience of post-traumatic stress. This happens to the majority of human beings. We have different coping mechanisms and different ways of working it through, but the idea of going to a therapist or being frightened about going to a therapist because you're worried that they'll reveal to you what's wrong with you and diagnose you with this disorder or that disorder or the other. Sometimes post-traumatic stress is best healed by talking about it, by getting it out of the system. So we're dealing with sort of fairly gentle stuff, Sag, because this is your seventh house and there is a lot of pain that can be attached to that beautiful, beautiful house of communion as well. So have a think about what emotions you can start to feel as time goes on. I'm publishing this 1 week before the lunation, so Mars is in Gemini at present. And so there may be that sort of that quick to anger that might be coming up for you, or there's a ferocity perhaps to your language in the way that you're relating to others. I wouldn't take that on board as something that's wrong with you, but I would tell you this as a tool for you to regulate and for you to perhaps step down off that ladder of intensity for a time. On the flip side of all of this, Sagittarius, Mars can also represent passion in a really vibrant way. Think of the color red and think of what that can represent in iconography. It can represent anger, it can represent fury, it can also represent passion and desire. So perhaps in some way there's something to do with your seventh house, with your house of relationship, that is actually being activated in a beautiful, sensual, passionate way. And so in that configuration, to look at it through that lens, as we do with astrology and with tarot, this is the beauty of this work, is that there is a multitude of perspectives to be achieved from this stuff. But there might be some passion brewing in that seventh house for you. And if that's the case, then I'm thrilled. I'm so happy for you. I think that that's beautiful and well deserved. And so maybe it might even be an invitation to be more direct and passionate with those that you love, those that are in your life that you would consider intimate partners, and tell them how you've been feeling. Tell them the intensity of your emotion. I dare say that because of the collective experience, and this is only my perspective, this is only from what I can glean from my emotional reaction, keeping in mind that my moon sign is in Gemini at 19 degrees, so I'm highly triggered right now. As we zoom out and look at the collective experience and we look at the anger that is free-flowing from these polarizing sides, from this grotesque display of theatre that politics seems to have become in our own society, let alone the global society, which has its own polarity, of which we are supposed to be the good ones. This is all very confusing times, and we're all rapidly coming to a realization of the responsibility that we have to the planet and also to humanity. And so with that comes anger, From some, because they were trained and taught that that's how they gain power, is by aggression. And to others, like us, our rage is coming to the surface because we just can't take it anymore. And we're sick and tired of being subjugated and oppressed and told that we are lesser than. So in that way, I suspect that this Mars conjunction with the full moon in Gemini might be a bit trickier than we would like it to be. That's your reading, Sagittarius. This one was more based in astrology than in the tarot. You know what? I actually think I might just pull you one card. I've had a lot to say at this one. It's taken me some time to get it out. But you're the last cab off the rank for my round. And I think that, I feel confident with the message. I feel confident with, hopefully there's been some explanation perhaps to some of this polarizing internal feeling, when we're presented with a world that's so polarized and there's so much aggression from all sides. To witness that in your internal system can be confronting. So hopefully this has explained that a little bit. Well, I got the Four of Wands for you, my lovely Sagittarian souls. The Four of Wands is victory. The Four of Wands is a beautiful portal into a new way of being and a beautiful potential for a great coupling and a great relationship. If you look at those wands, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 1111, as one of my dear, 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 dear mentors comes to say. 1111, you're on the right path, says Jennifer. And you're on the right path. As hazy as it feels right now, as difficult as this astrology is and of life on planet Earth is at present, you're going to be all right. And you're here for a purpose. And you're living out that purpose beautifully. Thank you, Sag. That's your reading. Thank you for liking and subscribing to my channel. Thank you for sharing it with those who think might need it. I really appreciate the help and support. I appreciate the spreading around. I don't know how to work an algorithm, so word of mouth seems to be working beautifully. You can head to umaruby.com and get your birth chart read by me. I'd be thrilled to do it for you. Also, if I've read your birth chart before, I do offer straight tarot readings too. It's called the Witch Reading, and you can have an hour with me and I'll read your cards about anything that you might like to ask. Excuse me, you can hear my voice going. That's the last reading. Thank you so much, Sagittarius. You do take care at this full moon in Gemini. I'm here if you need it. Bye.